Okay, so let's talk about the Agile Manifesto. How many people, I wonder, have even heard of that? People just like to say Agile, but not a lot of people realize there's a manifesto behind it. So, let's talk a little bit about history, first of all. A lot of people like to talk about methodologies and how we've evolved our practices over time. So let's talk through this kind of chart. Ford came out with Lean in 1913, right? So if you've ever been to Ford up in Detroit, you'll see single piece flow, where they actually took the chassis of the car, they pulled the chassis to the workers so that the workers could put parts on the car. Toyota then in 1948 improved on lean methods and figured out how to do multi-product flow. So how could you actually take a car down the assembly line but have multiple products that you were building, a variety of products and inventory. And Tatiana did a great job of telling the story. The book The Goal, there's a lot of lean material out there, but did a better job at telling the story. So a lot of people think lean came from Toyota. It was actually the next evolution of lean. Everybody's heard about waterfall. That's 1956. Most people heard about Deming in 1960. And then how many people, I wonder, remember Rational and Unified Process by IBM that came out in 74. So at this point now we're pivoting to kind of phase gates and structured systems. So start and point stops on how we do project management and delivery. But in 1995 is actually when Scrum came out, extreme programming, crystal clear came out. So that was when iterative and incremental kind of software development came out. And that's really kind of, if you ask me, the birth of Agile, because in 2001 an amazing thing happened. They decided to have a lightweight methods conference. So the folks who were out there on their bulletin boards, or I guess early internet days, were talking about how do we do incremental and adaptive software delivery. And they said, let's have a lightweight methods conference. It was either going to be, I think, a snowbird, or it was going to be somewhere warm. And for some reason they voted, there were a lot of skiers, John Kern, Granny, and a few of those guys, and they decided, hey, let's go to a ski resort. It was a weekend event. They showed up, and it was such a lightweight conference of thought leaders that they really had no agenda. So they walked in the room. Alistair has a master's in kind of methodology, so he was kind of helped facilitate some of this. And they basically said, let's agree on what we agree on. So rather than argue, is crystal better than extreme programming or this, what are the common values that we actually share? So they did this at the ski resort in 2001, and they first started by writing kind of the principles of Agile. And if you haven't read the principles, please do. It's in your book, your Agile discussion guide you got from Lean Dog. But take time and read through them, because by writing down the principles, they were then able to take these principles and factor them up. So go ahead and glance through that for a couple minutes here. And I'll give it a pause. So, some of them are, welcoming changing requirements, delivering software frequently, self-organizing teams, simplicity, working software, rather than documentation. So there's a lot of principles that were very good principles that all of these thought leaders in the industry were thinking about. They then took those principles and they kind of refactored it up, and they created what's called as the Agile Manifesto. Okay. And at the end of the day, the way to read this is that we value individuals' interactions over processing tools, working software over documentation, collaboration over contracts, right, and responding to change over sticking to the plan. Okay, so it's not saying these things on the right aren't important, like there's no room for documentation in their contracts or plans. What it's saying is that when push comes to shove, we err on the left side of this. Okay, so this is a value system. Your company probably has values, right, at your corporation. This is no different than that, right? We believe in these values and upholding these values. But what's the common thing on the left, right? If you look at these green things, working software, collaboration, adapting, individuals' interactions, like what's the common pattern that screams out at you at Agile Manifesto? Okay, so think about that for a second. It's pretty obvious to me that basically we rely on people, right, and minds, right, versus sticking to rigid things like documentation, contracts, plans, tools, and process, right? When push comes to shove, if we err on the human side of what we do, right, we'll come out with a better outcome. And that, in a nutshell, is what Agile is. And that's why Agile is such a broad term, right? Agile isn't one thing. And so they went out after this, they created agilemanifesto.org. They went out, they're called the Agile Signatories, and they pledged to uphold this value system, regardless of what we call our practices, whether it's extreme programming, lean, Scrum, Crystal, doesn't matter. We will always try to move towards the left rather than the right, and therefore we will create high performing teams and cultures. So that's what Agile is. So when Gartner says, hey, we're Agile, or are you Agile? It's like saying, okay, do you believe in these values? Do you continually learn and try to support these values? It's not, am I doing Scrum, am I doing lean, or one thing. So Agile is, and at the higher level, the manifesto also states, like, our goal is to uncover better ways of developing software by doing it and helping others do it. And we practice with a lot of these Agile manifestos. There are many of them are good friends of Lean Dog. We speak at conferences together, and they had the 10-year reunion in 2011. It's 2020, and when they did, they were asked, what would you have done differently with the Agile Manifesto? And the first joke was we probably all would have brought lawyers, because we would have realized all these certifications and there's going to be a lot of money behind this Agile movement thing. But in all seriousness, they said, I think the only thing that we would apply is it's not just about software, it's about how do you develop products, okay? How do you create high-performing teams who are continually learning to develop better products? And that's really, at the heart of it, is really what Agile means. So replace the word Agile with that, and I think you'll get it. So if we go back and we look at this timeline again, right, that was 1995. These 17 thought leaders got together in 2001, 6 years later. And then in 2003, Mary and Tom Poppendieck wrote a good book on how to apply lean thinking, right? So pulling some of the lean stuff forward. And we introduced things like Kanban and understand single piece flow and understanding waste and steps. And Kanban kind of became a thing, although Kanban's kind of part of lean, in my opinion. It's just a process within the lean manufacturing that we can pull forward to knowledge workers in this day and age. So this is the lean book that Mary and Tom, this is the newer version of their lean book. You can see lean has things like seeing the whole, embracing optionality, amplifying learning, empowering people, right? Eliminating waste, building integrity in. So that was some kind of the newer thinking around lean. Lean and Agile go hand in hand, right? Some of the principles around lean complement some of the concepts around Agile. And so they're kind of, I use them interchangeably. We're Lean Dog, doesn't mean we only do lean here. It just means that we think that, in my experience, lean really helped us get to the next level over Scrum and XP and some of the things that were going on. And now there's even more modern delivery than that we'll talk about in this class. So what is Lean and Agile? It's a lot of practices, right? It could be all these things. It could be Scrum, it could be Kanban, it could be design thinking, user-centered design. It could be frameworks such as Less Stat or Safe, right, that help you. They're scaling frameworks. So it really is about the values and the principles more than it is about the practices, right? The practices are up for you guys to decide what you want to do. So we're going to overload you with a lot of practices, right? And some of these practices you should adopt. Some are staples you must adopt. But we're going to talk about that in all these upcoming segments, is all the things that we consider Agile and Lean or Agile, and you're going to have to pick out your own destiny on what you practice to uphold the Agile Manifesto. Alistair Coburn wrote this Oath of Non-Allegiance. I really like it because one of the challenges in our industry, there's a lot of certifications. So somebody goes off and they become a Scrum Master, and it's like, oh, I can only do Scrum. Some people go off and become Kanban certified practitioner. Our whole point is continually learn, like continually try to uncover better ways of doing product development. And if you don't try multiple things, you don't know what's best. So don't get religious about this, right? Experiment, vary it. Don't get to, I got a certification, therefore I must only work this one way. Just be on that continual learning journey and learn as many ways of practicing, and then you can adapt your practices situationally to whatever you're trying to accomplish or whatever your self-empowered team is trying to accomplish, right? You now have more tools in your tool belt, right, to solve the problem, and it's not always the hammer, right? Sometimes it changes. So, practice the oath of non-allegiance and don't get too religious about, certifications and what it is that you're an expert at. So we've put together this Agile discussion guide, which you've all downloaded, or you have a physical print copy of it. This is constantly changing. We just came out with this 4th edition. Next one's coming out soon. As we uncover better ways of building software, or products, I should say, or high-performing teams and cultures, we put our practices in the book. I think you'll find that a lot of the practices we're going to teach you have nothing to do with software development. There's just high-performing people doing producing as a team on a common value stream of what they need to produce. So it's very important. I was helping lead the movement with Nationwide Insurance prior to starting Lean Dog, and I surrounded ourselves with people who were smarter than us, who understood psych and soc and organizational design and change. And culture, words are really important in any culture. So the reason we have this playbook, we were nationwide, we called it the Agile Tea Leaves, the Lean Dog, we call it the Lean Dog Agile Discussion Guide. But basically the format of the book is to lead an intelligent discussion. It's not to come in and assess you or judge you. It's to say, hey, if I was going to sit down and talk to you about a daily stand-up or a retrospective or behavior-driven development, these bullet points are things that I would talk to you about, and we'd have a good discussion. You say, yeah, that's kind of what we mean here, but we don't do these things, or we do these things. So that's the attitude of the book. The attitude of the book is to lead a discussion. It's not to judge you. It's not to say if you don't do these things, you are or aren't doing Agile. It's saying we've documented our Lean Dog vocabulary. You need to document your own vocabulary at your company. We need to compare them, and we need to figure out what makes sense in your world. So that's our book. As we go through this course, we're going to be in the chat stream texting in the page numbers. That's one of the feedback points we got, is that people don't know what page we're on in the book. So we'll do our best to kind of keep you informed of that, so you can follow along and take notes if you'd like. The last thing I want to talk about with the book is that one of the lean practices is standard work. So even when we come in coach, we actually believe that you have to have this kind of standard. You have to have your vocabulary and your words, so that there's some guidelines about what you mean by these practices. It's not just a free-for-all. Agile doesn't mean that everybody just does what they want. It means, no, if we think that everybody here should do retrospectives because that's a feedback loop, or sprint reviews, or iteration reviews, or show and tells, it's okay to have standards on how you actually practice, and then have room for the teams to self-adapt and learn and adapt practices and methods that make sense for themselves. So standard work is an important part of having any consistency, and we are fans of that. So let's talk about why. Why do people do Lean and Agile? So there's tool companies out there. This one's version 1, which I think is now at CollabNet. They do a big survey every year. This is an older survey, but you can see that one of the reasons they do it is accelerate product delivery, right? Everybody wants to go faster. Well, what does go faster really mean? To me, it means things like, wow, we actually work on limited things, right? We have clear focus on what business outcome we're trying to drive till we get to it. We reduce waste. We have continual learning and cross-training, right? And that allows us to work smarter, and therefore perceive to go faster because we seem to get more done. We're really focused. So that's always a big one. Changing priorities, right? The business is always changing. People are always changing what they want and how they want it. Technology is always changing, especially in this digital age. Productivity, right? That's kind of like go faster. Or visibility or quality, IT and business alignment, reducing risk, improving morale. So we'll use this chart when we work with you to have you tell us, well, why did you call us? Why do you want to go Agile? Like, what business outcome are you going to drive? It typically is always about faster, cheaper, right? That's like what everybody wants. But this is a kind of a good gradient. But these are the results that people are getting, right? 69% of the people are saying they go faster, right? Or they accelerated delivery, or they increased productivity. So those are pretty compelling numbers, and it's hard in this day and age for anybody to say you wouldn't want these things if you were running a company, right? Or a department, okay? Another benefit chart, this is another one, another year of version 1, but kind of a little bit differently. You can see that most people start pursuing the path, got the desired outcomes. Some people didn't have any change, or it got worse, or they just don't know. That's the small side of it. So most people are winning this battle of going Agile, right? Their ability to do it. When they don't, usually it's coming from the top, and there's a lot of systematic issues that prevent this. The barriers to this, just like we talked about in the IDEO video, culture, right? The company philosophy or culture is at odds with this, right? So when people say to me, hey John, is my project right for Agile? That doesn't make sense, because it's a set of values and principles. So it's not like this project's good for it and this project's not. It's like, are your people willing to continually learn and work in this environment and share knowledge and change the culture, right? And cut down the wasteful steps. So when we go into a place, if we can't help you change, one of the first smells is from the top. Culturally, can we work in this kind of environment? Can we pivot to servant leadership? Can we be honest about what we're good at and what we're not good at? And can we really focus our value stream or our project portfolio to have a laser focus on business outcomes? And so, lack of management support, lack of experience with agile methods, lack of working with the business owner, insufficient training. Most agile movements you can't just go to, it seems easy, but just going to a training class and trying to do it doesn't quite work that well, because it's harder to do in practice than it is in reality. So these are the barriers, but guess what? Number one is culture. So we are pretty careful to make sure the companies we work with, we think they are set up for the they have the right culture to even start down this journey. All right, because if you don't have the right attitude from the top, it's not going to work from the bottom, the middle, or anywhere else in your organization. So let's talk about this.